Sabrina 2000s comic issue 58. Sabrina tells Landra at a store that she's looking at her favorite manga stories, and somehow she never heard of manga before either. Why is this the second time this happened? It's annoying to get told what manga is twice. It just reminds you that the comic knows that its audience isn't a bunch of manga fans, which makes this issue even more confusing. So after an entire page was wasted with the writer shoving her interest in manga down my throat with no subtlety at all, Landra wonders what her life would be like if they were in a manga. The only reason it'd be any different is if it got changed to be stereotypical of manga, just to conform to it. And we wouldn't need there to be a difference. Sabrina gets an idea, and Salem doesn't like the sound of this. If the writer knew to have him say this, why did this happen anyways? So Sabrina uses magic to change art styles, and Salem complains that he looks like a stuffed animal. I didn't want to think it was possible, but somehow he looks even worse. Sabrina looks terrible, and so does her friend. But in the next panel she looks fine, and so does she. There's clearly no reason for Sabrina to have her hair look like this. But it doesn't look bad. Although, I'm pretty sure that if Kid Me saw how she would end up looking, I would have been pretty off-put by it. I'm surprised the story ended there. It's oddly responsible of Salem to refuse to help Sabrina on her history tests. Sabrina likes the idea that he could come to school with her without anyone knowing he's a cat. But he's not a real cat. Considering that this isn't the same story as the previous one, it really seems like there's no excuse for keeping the manga art style whatsoever. It should have just had the title be the same. I barely read any manga myself, just Sonic one. So I hope it deconstructs or parodies manga to make it worth it instead of the art style change being completely pointless except to force anime tropes down our throat. Because I can't stand how Harvey looks here. No wonder fans hated the art style. But it's not all bad. Sabrina says she can't believe Harvey picked a chick flick, and he says it was the only thing left. Somehow she doesn't immediately learn her lesson from this, and instead says that he does have a romantic side, because she's an idiot. He says it's getting late and they have school tomorrow. Why is he being written like this? The last time I checked, he was all lovey-dovey with her. Is this just because it's manga now? I wonder if this art style change happened at the same time that Archie Sonic was having its art look more manga style and was done for the same reason. At least that would explain it better, but it's common sense not to do something that would alienate the audience. It wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't a permanent change, but it is. So Harvey's pathetic now, making me lose all respect for him. That wasn't funny. Sabrina wishes she had a spell that would show her how Harvey really feels about her. Why not do it then? Sabrina comes home late and gets yelled at for it as I hate that their mouths are colored white when they're talking with them. The whole reason I stopped watching the Pokemon anime as a kid was that I started hating the art style because it tries way too hard to show how the characters are feeling, and doesn't even try to be realistic about it. It's blatantly unnecessary and distracting. Sabrina lampshades that her aunts are cool sometimes and lame other times. Lampshading a problem doesn't make it okay. She gets told she has a big report due tomorrow, so she has to stay up. And then she hands in an essay about lucky charms and the spells that make them work. And the teacher says this in front of the entire class and asks if this is a joke, and everyone laughs at her. That's very painful to watch. I wish Sabrina just reversed time to undo this. Why would Shinji get transferred to her class? I have to just assume that he begged his parents to do this so that he could get close to Sabrina. Without knowing what happened, it just feels meta to cause a very stereotypical generic drama. And once again, the girls love him instead of there being any self-awareness on the people who made the comic that he looks stupid. When I would have loved it if the realistic thing happened and people thought he looked stupid for having blue hair and made him get black hair. Then I'd have someone to relate to. He finally explains in front of the lockers that he's doing a project on mortals and how they live without magic. Logically, this project wouldn't last more than a day if that was his actual excuse. So really, I'd prefer if I got told the truth by him instead. Amy worries Harvey by pointing out the ship teas between them, and he doesn't know what to say. Shinji hates the cafeteria food on its looks alone and uses magic to shapeshift it. He zaps open his combination lock out of laziness. He's in a crowd and decides to use his zap to get to his class in time. And I'm not showing people witnessing that magic and freaking out. He zaps the clock in class forwards an hour because class is dull. The coach tells the students to continue their warm-ups as I'm still waiting for Sabrina to use magic. This is the kind of writing that much earlier stories would have, with Sabrina instead of Shinji. He tells her to steal the ball from him and they blush. Harvey throws the ball at Shinji, who uses magic to throw the ball back at Harvey. Sabrina calls him out on this, and somehow nobody acts as if they can hear her. She should have been drawn as having a whispering text bubble. Amy's suspicious, and Shinji gets threatened by her and wants to know what she wants. Amy says she wants Harvey and asks why he doesn't just date Sabrina already. Obviously, it's because she's already taken. At least that's what everyone would assume. After all, they were just watching a video together. I thought they would break up at first because of Lilith. Instead, it was just there for a cheap ploy to get the readers to keep reading. Why do people praise the storyline of this comic? It doesn't take any talent at all to write a love triangle. He stands up to Amy, and Sabrina wastes time complaining to Landra over the phone. I could have assumed she felt this way. Can the plot progress already? She says she's been getting a crush on Shinji. As if she didn't have one the second she met him. Idiot. She was an idiot sometimes in the 70s and 80s, but I could forgive it because she was constantly doing good deeds. This writing has absolutely no self-awareness or respect for our intelligence if it's not even remembering basic continuity. Shinji floats books around, impressing some girls. Days later, she can't take it anymore, and Salem asks if she's jealous that he's impressing girls. At least he does lampshade that she uses magic in front of mortals. Am I going to see someone react to the fact that she's talking to Salem and he's talking to her? Because there'd be no intelligence and self-awareness in the writing if that never happened, and somehow everything was always fine when school hallways tend to be pretty crowded. It was immediately obvious that she'd be caught talking to Salem if she brought him to school. I get wanting to take her friend at school, but it's dumb to do it too often when all it's contributing is wasting my time with her talking to him instead of casting a spell, and making me ask why she isn't getting caught. At least it's changing the status quo. But an art style change doesn't endear me to it. Really, the only status quo change, other than that, was Shinji moving to Sabrina's school. And it took no talent to come up with that. Finally, Sabrina asks her aunt if she can block other people's spells. She's told that it's only for the most skilled witches and wizards. But all she'd have to do is read out magic words to make it happen, even if it was hard to visualize, right? If that's the case, then anyone could do it, and I'm insulted that I'm expected to believe otherwise. Sabrina's told that people have been punished for using the spell unlawfully. Because for the first time in the entire franchise, I'm supposed to believe that witches get punished for using certain spells. It's a bit too late for that. She's not told specifically when it's allowed. She has every reason to think she's allowed to use it then, because Shinji's showing off to mortals. But she still has no reason not to tell her aunts why she wants to use it. For all I know, the writing will become bullshit and she somehow will be breaking the rules. Because if they were clueless enough to change the art to look like this, I can't trust the comic anymore. It's interesting that Salem mastered spell freeze when he tried to take over the world. He at least thought ahead that much. He says that he still remembers where she can find the spell book that contains that spell. Why would it be in any book if it's apparently illegal? What happened to the good old days where the witches always thought of the spells themselves? Where she could just think of a poem and cast the spell herself? I don't know why Sabrina thinks she has to warp to the magic realm based on what Salem said. He made no indication of where she'd need to go, and yet somehow she went to a graveyard. How did she know to come here if he didn't tell her it was buried in a crypt? If her magic was sending her to the book, there's no excuse for not sending her directly in front of it at that point. Instead, she wastes my time. And the writer annoys me with the out-of-place manga obsession some more because Salem mentions a Japanese name when saying that the beast was going to lead his army of henchmen. Sabrina lights up the way with magic and soon gets to the magic book. She hears a scary noise and gets told to keep looking because who knows what else may have moved in here. These two are idiots for not just warping home with the book instantly. She could warp it back later. There's absolutely no excuse for the monster meeting them whatsoever. This is stupid and no one should be defending it. Sabrina should really just freeze time right now. There's no excuse for the Sabrina series being a drama when she has all these powers. Instead, the monster wastes my time and doesn't believe that Salem's who he is because of the way he looks. So they have to run away, and Sabrina says she tried to copy the spell, but it was rushed. Gee, too bad she didn't think to just take a picture of it with her cell phone, since she knew she was going to be approaching a book she wasn't allowed to approach. So she'll have to hope it works. She doesn't have to! It's immediately obvious that all she has to do is go back there, with time frozen, or warp the book to her now that she's seen it. This plot has absolutely no excuse for happening and no one should be taken it seriously. It deserves to be immediately off-putting. I have no idea why the comic wasn't cancelled immediately after this. Oh gee, I wonder if the spell will backfire. Go figure, it screws up. Somehow, even though that wasn't what she imagined at all, Shinji gets frozen in time, but he can still try to talk and fail as the students walk away. Logically, she'd instantly undo it just by pointing and imagining him walking, like she did with Harvey in the 90s comic. Instead, my intelligence is completely insulted, as she has to run away to her aunties like she's a little girl. What is this, the animated series? How completely stupid does the writer think I am that she'd seriously think I wouldn't question this? If this character went back in time, she could freeze time for everyone but her and her aunts to keep anyone else from seeing him and getting suspicious. That'd also be common sense. Instead, she runs all the way home instead of warping her aunts to her or warping to her aunts. How is she that dumb? Because bullshit. Only a kiss can unfreeze Shinji. Because that's what the writer cares about. Not magic and a non-sloppy way of writing it. I think I'm gonna trash the rest of this comic if it keeps going on like this. And I'm not even completely against this shit. It'd be great if Shinji looked like Harvey. He could have a real hair color so that he wouldn't lose any chance of me taking him seriously right away. The fact that she has to kiss him really goes to show you the writer's priorities and the pandering to the very specific girl audience. Zelda won't kiss him because he's centuries too young for her. I don't think she'd care. If witches live for that long, I don't think they'd care. Sabrina gets upset and warps to Shinji at night because she didn't want to be seen doing this during school hours. Again, it's immediately obvious that she could just freeze time to do this sooner. My time is really being wasted instead of her just instantly kissing him. I get that she's reluctant, that makes sense. At least it avoided forced drama because Harvey didn't see it. They agreed and never talked about this again. And my time is wasted with an entire page of Sabrina writing in her diary about her extremely obvious, predictable thoughts about the situation. Why should I care? This is cliché. I want to see her cast spells. Watch the 70s cartoon instead of reading this comic. You'll be a lot happier. I'm bored out of my mind. It's gonna be hard to motivate myself to continue this comic. She looks terrible on the cover. If they're returning to her having short hair, why wasn't it immediately obvious to everybody that she needed to have a long bob haircut? This really boring story was about Sabrina, after changing the art style to be terrible, having to deal with Shinji using magic a lot in her school. Because he's doing a report on how mortals live, but he's not living like a mortal anyways. And then somehow Sabrina freezes Shinji in time by accident, when all she wanted to do was remove his powers when he's in school, which I'm pretty sure she'd be able to do, and she wouldn't need her aunt's help either. Sabrina 2000s comic, issue 59. It starts out with Sabrina thinking that it's time for the Blue Ribbon Tournament again. I've never heard of that. There's a picture of a basketball there. Why doesn't she just say the basketball tournament? I'm not invested because she knows about the Blue Ribbon tournament and I don't. And I have no reason to care about something as mundane as a teenager's basketball game. Salem is relatable by not caring about it, and Sabrina says it's a romantic tradition where each member of the team chooses a girl to wear a blue ribbon in her hair to cheer them on during the tournament. So what? Wasn't it enough that her aunts were boy crazy? It's redundant to make her like this too. I can't help but wonder if this is only the case because it's trying to imitate anime and it's a Japanese thing. Because I don't remember this in anything. None of the Betty and Veronica comics or anything. She imagines Harvey giving her the ribbon. And then she angsts about the fact that the tournament's only 2 days away and he hasn't given it to her. Or he's waiting until the last minute because it's not that important to him, or he's complete shy coward. Out of nowhere, Sabrina thinks she's stupid to assume that he might have chosen her because he doesn't see her as anything more than just a friend. This was the case in the previous issue. How did the writer not know that they were dating? They were dating just 2 issues ago. Why did this completely sloppy lack of respect for even the most basic of continuity make it past the editing? Everyone knows they're dating. Amy leaves the class and realizes she left her textbook behind. So she witnesses Harvey ask Sabrina to wear the blue ribbon. Why is he doing this? If he's not dating her, why is he shy about it? What was the point of changing his character to be like that, when I can't imagine anyone would like him like that? What was the point of even trying to appeal to manga fans at all? I'm pretty sure manga fans wouldn't pick this up, because it wouldn't be anything like most of the manga they like. I thought manga was way more obscure and less popular in the West than Western comics. Because, no duh, it's not from the West. So why is the entire staff of the comic trying to cash in on manga fans and no one else? He tells Sabrina that she's his best friend that's a girl. Why are they suddenly retconning away the fact that they're dating and pretending they never dated before? This is blatantly insulting. Why would her manga spell have her forget that they used to date when she didn't want that? So in this new continuity, Sabrina has a reason to be surprised that she got a blue ribbon from him. And Amy tries to ruin her fun by telling her that she got given the ribbon as a last resort. She has a good point that he did wait until the last minute to ask her. I have to assume Amy's lying when she says that he already offered the ribbon to her. Because we all know that she wants Harvey, so if he offered it, she'd have taken it. And he would have no reason to offer it to her if Sabrina is his best friend that's a girl, and he has no reason to like Amy. She says that she turned him down because 5 other guys already asked her first. Wouldn't Sabrina know that Amy wants to date Harvey by now? How does she buy this? Then Shinji complains that Sabrina never told him how hard it was going to 2 schools. How did she never tell him in all this time? Landra shows no sympathy to him. That came out of nowhere for her. She went through the trouble of trying to get a condor egg back to its mother. Sabrina's tired and is asked if she's okay as my time continues to be wasted by a plot that's gone nowhere. They're told that it's time for the students to make their own flying broomsticks. Ooh, exciting. Why did they need to do this under the light of a full moon? Couldn't a witch just fly with anything by pointing at it? They could point at a regular broom to make it fly. Who cares about this? Boy, this comic got boring. Maybe it's just because the pacing is way too slow. Sabrina's told that they'll need to have an extra class that night because of this waste of time. Seriously, none of the witches would ever need to know how flying brooms are made. Why would this class be mandatory? She's disappointed because the class takes place on the day of the Blue Ribbon tournament, I suppose. Couldn't she make a duplicate of herself? She's told the class is mandatory, but then she's told that she'll receive extra credit. Huh? Why would it be extra then, if it's mandatory? Sabrina tells Harvey she can't go to the basketball game, rather than a witch like her thinking that she could make an equally intelligent as her clone of herself descend to that worthless game, which she is capable of doing in the 2000s and 90s comic. She says she'll try to get back from the class before the game ends. Then we see her with her class in a forest that's so full of magical energy that their own magic is smothered. Somehow. So they have to gather broom material without magic. That's not very magical. Aren't brooms generally made out of wood? Why can't they just gather wood from other places? That sure is unlucky. They're told to travel in groups. Why am I seeing so much of this? I have no reason to care. She could fail and drop out of magic school and I'd just cheer. This isn't making her a proper escapist character because you can't really imagine yourself as her if she's not in a normal high school. The teacher wants them to give personality to their man-made broom. Every time a witch flies in a broom, it looks the same. Why was an entire page wasted on this? Landra says she can help them find the best plants because her father taught her about that. And that's the only time that her being from South America is going to be used in the entirety of this comic. At least as far as I can remember. Why not just have Chloe? Why even have her around? Sabrina wastes my time hoping she'll find a hair from a unicorn. Landra doubts that'll happen in a magical forest. Landra finds some stuff that does specific stuff for the broom. I don't care. I don't take it seriously because there's no reason they'd need to make a flying broom instead of just pointing to cast a spell on a regular broom. Or buying the magic broom from a shop that gets magic brooms tuned up, like in the 70s cartoon. Why is an entire scene being wasted on them finding stuff in the woods? Oh, how exciting. They walk around and pick stuff up. Could this pacing get any slower? Plots like this are too basic to deserve that many panels. Go figure, Shinji is jealous and Harvey's without Sabrina. This is a waste of time, but this whole plot feels like a waste of time. So I don't know what to mention and what not to anymore. It's like the Archie Sonic reboot. How did she manage to lose her blue ribbon? Wait, couldn't she have kept it in her locker instead of bringing it to the enchanted forest? This only briefly happens so that she can get separated from her group by fog because they didn't think to stick with her. Irresponsibly. They can't hear her because of the magic fog. How inconvenient. Out of all the other things it could do. She gets talked to by a wise rock that refuses to help her get out of the forest unless she'll answer his riddle. If he's that evil, why would he even bother helping her? He can't think of a good riddle, and his dialogue is actually so boring that he bores himself to sleep. If only the whole comic was this self-aware. She finds the forest sprite cute, and when she asks for a way out of the woods, she lampshades it when he wants a reward first. He conveniently lost his treasure down a hole and his arms can't reach it. It sure is a shame that this magical creature didn't leave the forest that you can't use magic in and make his arms long so he'll be able to reach it, and then come back. Her arms can't reach it either. And he explains why he did it at least. He was trying to be like a squirrel. At least this weird magical forest stuff is interesting because it's so random. Even if it's a foregone conclusion that Sabrina will make it out of there. Thank goodness. Not that I like her anymore because she's all wrapped up in this pointless love triangle because it's a work of fiction. And she feels self-centered primarily instead of being a constant goody two-shoes. She smartly decides to use the ribbon to get the thing. And comic space is wasted by me seeing that Harvey was getting lucky just when she did. Then the sprite wastes my time lying to her just to say that he got out of a cereal box. He then calls her silly and says that her teacher should have warned her about talking to forest spirits. Them refusing to actually help her just seems arbitrary to force the plot to last longer. She says she should have listened to the professor's warnings. So she did warn her. So there's no excuse for all of this happening. She runs after the monster and grabs his tail, but no, she just falls and gets told that's a gift. She sees his hair, and conveniently, her group finds her. She gets a hug, but I wish it was from Landra instead of a jealous guy who's desperate to date her. At least had to deal with a giant spider just like he worried about. Somehow the teacher totally buys it when Sabrina says that the forest trickster gave her one of his hairs. She tells the teacher she's sad because she let a friend down today. The teacher says she can make her broom first. She instructs her with a lot of boring dialogue. I'm seriously not interested in all these details. She forgot to look for anything special in the forest to add to it. She decides to add the entire blue ribbon that she's supposed to be wearing at the basketball game, rather than just tearing a bit of it and putting a piece in it. The whole ribbon being around the broom does look nice, but she would just look silly bringing it to the basketball game. She thanks the teacher and somehow expects me to believe that she's never been trained on how to ride a broom, after all of those issues. Wait a minute, she was riding a broom in the 2000s comic! She came to this comic from the 2000s comic. Wouldn't it be a simple matter for her to just point at herself and fly anyways? Why won't she just fly on her own? The teacher casts a spell on the broom to help her out, and she thanks her for it. And she actually makes it to the game in time. Good, it avoids easy drama. It's sad that I have to compliment that though, because I should be taking that for granted. She can warp. Obviously, the series had 2 different TV shows with laugh tracks in it, one of which had the words Comedy Hour in its title. Is a comedy that has no business taking itself completely seriously, at the expense of making sense. She finds out Amy doesn't have any ribbons, and pities her and offers her popcorn, which she agrees to. Sabrina apologizes to him for missing most of the tournament, and he's just grateful that she showed up. He somehow thinks that it felt like she was there anyways. She's not relatable because she says it isn't stupid. Well, that is polite of her, but it's not relatable of her to mean that. Why did the last panel exist? Why did we see the janitor? There were so many boring panels. Most of this issue was just boring stuff I don't care about. And it's so annoying that every time the comic shows fan letters in it at the end, the writer intentionally only shows off the few select weirdos that wrote it saying that they liked the art style change. When TV Tropes made it pretty clear, fans hated the artwork. Whoever's in charge isn't willing to accept any criticism about the comic and just shows off the people who agrees with them, like in the modern Sonic comics. Meanwhile, the old Archie Sonic comics actually did show off letters from the fans in Sonic Rams that were criticizing the comic. Like, criticizing the way the characters' eyes were drawn by John Gray. The only impressive part of the story was the random stuff that happened in the Magic Forest when Sabrina got lost in it. That's the only thing that took effort to come up with. It was at least fantasy, but this whole story was boring. I don't know why they have to make a magic broom when clearly they could just point at any broom to make it fly. And while there were specific racing brooms in the 70s show, you'd think they'd be made by witches specializing in that. I never imagined that those brooms would be made by the owners of them. The fact that she suddenly can't fly with a broom and needs to be taught to just makes me remember the fact that she could fly with a broom in the previous comic, and could even do so as little Sabrina. And that makes me wonder why witches even insist on flying with brooms when I'm sure they could fly without them. So why would they even have brooms? Why is this class mandatory when she could just point at herself to fly? Or fly on anything? Oh, they're looking for stuff in the woods. How exciting. And it's padded out by them talking to each other. I never heard of the blue ribbon thing before. It clearly only exists to push the whole love triangle drama that only exists as an obvious ratings trap. This was the only story in the issue. Sabrina stories have no business lasting the entire issue. Their plots are too simple for that. At least it being in a forest where she can't use her powers helps to justify why she doesn't find out how to locate her friends right after getting separated from them. And justifies why she doesn't just summon up everything she needs right away. At least the story had a happy ending where Harvey wasn't mad at her. But this isn't an issue that gets me to care about his story, because it drags.